I was on the second story of a converted house. There was an attic apartment above me that was empty and unoccupied. The landlord's apartment was the entire downstairs floor. I frequently heard thumping up there, but always assumed it was the typical old house creaks. Well, one day, I was sleeping in my bed. It was facing the doorway into another room. I saw what I thought were window curtains flowing in the breeze of an open window, but then I remembered that A, that window isn't open, and B, it doesn't have curtains. Then, a woman's floating figure in a nightgown starts floating across the other room towards my doorway. I was frozen in place in fear. Then she does the typical flying at you with a scary look on her face thing, and I freaked out and got up. I inspected the place and I saw it was empty. I chalked it up to sleep paralysis and ignored it. Cue a couple months later, I moved my bed in the room. It's now next to the heating duct, which connected all 3 floors. Old school style cast iron vent covered was on the wall about knee high. Probably 12 by 12. I start to hear my name being called out in the night. I thought it was someone out front at first. I even went out the front door once at 3 a.m. to let the person in the house. I had thought it was a new guy at work looking for a place to crash, but there was nobody there. This continued for several nights until I realized that it was coming from the vent, and it was definitely someone whispering my name. As things progressed, I started hearing bumping around upstairs. I investigated that apartment several times and it was wholly unoccupied with no means of getting in, except through the communal hallway, which oddly enough had a door to my bedroom. One night, I had my girlfriend sleeping over and she heard the whispering too. We investigated upstairs together and saw nothing. We got back to my room again, and now I'm super annoyed and freaked out. The bumping resumes upstairs. Clearly someone was walking around. I grabbed a knife in case it was a hobo or a friend messing with me or something. I sat on my bedroom floor for the rest of the night, listening to someone walk around upstairs. My girlfriend heard it too and was freaked out with me. I'm not kidding when I say I heard the footsteps go across the ceiling towards the stairs. They came down the stairs to the door that led to the upstairs apartment, which again was in the communal hallway and was right outside my bedroom door. I never heard the apartment door open or close, but I heard the footsteps continue all the way down the stairs, and then down the hallway towards the stairs that led out front. I'm completely annoyed and full of early 20s rage, anger, and adrenaline that someone dared to mess with me. So I opened the door ready to stab anyone who was out there, but there was nobody there. Me and my girlfriend investigated thoroughly and found nobody. The footsteps upstairs stopped. The whispering stopped. I never heard anything or saw anything again. Fortunately, I moved out a few months later, but that place really messed me up. So, this is a story that happened to my mom's friend in Korea about 10 years ago. Every time I hear this story, I still get the chills. My mom's friend lived in an apartment complex in Seoul. She was a stay-at-home mother with a young daughter, and her husband worked during the days. One day, she was coming home from running errands with her daughter and got onto the elevator in her building. When she got on, she noticed that there was a man wearing a cap and a yellow raincoat, and he kept his head low so that she couldn't really see his face. She immediately felt really uneasy, and she made her daughter stand by her side, furthest away from the man. What made her feel even more uncomfortable was that when she pressed a button for her floor, there was no other lit number. And on top of that, she noticed that he was carrying something wrapped inside newspaper close to his side. Things started to click in my mom's friend's head, and she started to panic and decided to take out her cell phone and pretend she was calling home to her husband, who was obviously really not at home and at work. She started saying things like,
"Oh, I'm on the elevator and about to get off. Can you get the door for me?"
and making it seem like her husband was waiting at home. When the elevator did reach her floor, I think she lived on the 12th floor or something, she quickly got off and grabbed the daughter and started to walk as fast as she could to her apartment. She noticed that the man also got off on her floor and was slowly following her down the hallway. When my mom's friend got to her door, she started to bang on it and shout,
"Hey dear, I'm home. Please, open the door."
and kind of pretended like he was coming to answer the door. Upon seeing this, the man in the yellow raincoat started to walk away back towards the elevator. When he seemed to be far enough, my mom's friend quickly picked up her daughter and slid open her door's passcode. This is usually how people get into their homes in Korea, and started to frantically punch in her key code. But the problem was that the buttons would make sounds, so the man knew that no one was going to answer the door for her, and he turned around and started to run back towards her. My mom's friend at this point was practically screaming, and when she finally got her door to open, the first thing she did was throw her daughter in through the door. When she got in herself, she saw that the man was pretty much inches from the door, but she managed to shut it and lock it before he could wedge his hand or weapon into the door. Afterwards, looking through the door's peephole, she saw that the man was walking away back towards the elevator. Several months later, my mom's friend was watching the news, and there was a coverage on the capture of a serial killer named Yu Young-chul, who used to kill a lot of night workers. She told my mom that she could never forget the dread she felt when she saw the too familiar yellow raincoat and hat that he was wearing when apprehended. When I was a lot younger, around my early teens, I had a pen pal who I would exchange emails with. Her name was Natsumi, and she lived in Japan. I found out she would be visiting America around summer vacation as a part of her club activity, or something along those lines. My mother, who worked for a travel company at the time, was able to get a little miniature trip pulled together for us to Boston, where Natsumi would be staying. I was excited about meeting my pen pal in person. It's something I looked forward to greatly. I spent the better part of 2 months wondering what she would be like in person, if she spoke good enough English for us to understand each other, and etc. Well, it turned out to be all for nothing. After several days in Boston, we were unable to meet together, except for a very brief moment the night before I was going home. She'd been on tours and all that sort of stuff with her club, so we didn't get a chance to meet up due to all those structured activities. My mom, as you can imagine, was not pleased. That trip was not terribly expensive, but it wasn't like we were traveling for free. We went to where Natsumi was staying, had the TripAdvisor bring her downstairs, and my mom went off on her own. I can definitely understand her reasoning. Meeting her was the entire point of this trip. So, long story short, that was the end of my pen pal correspondence with Miss Natsumi. Now, here's where things get strange. On that same night, I went for a little stroll outside the hotel. There was a Wendy's I could see was open from the hotel room. My mom was asleep and I had $5 burning a hole in my pocket. Plus, my little delinquent ass wanted to smoke outside, where it was nice and cool. As I stepped outside, through one of the fire doors of the hotel, I lit up a cigarette and a guy in his late 20s approached me. He asked me what I was doing. I said I was going to Wendy's. His exact response was, "I'm pretty sure your mother told you not to walk over there without her," which she had. I didn't really piece together the weirdness of that until later, so I just lied and said she gave me the okay. I started walking and he walked alongside me, puffing on a cigarette of his own. He asked me if I ever got to see my pen pal, and I told him I hadn't. "Sorry kid," he told me. "But if she came here with people from her school, there was no way they'd let her run around Boston with you and your mom. She should have known better." I quickly realized that this man I'd never met before knew things that there was no way he could have known about me. For starters, this was back at a time when there was no Wi-Fi everywhere. You had to plug your internet into the wall at a hotel, so it's not like I'd been on the internet announcing my plans. We didn't own a laptop. Hell, we didn't even use the hotel phone the entire time we were there. Who the hell was this guy, and how does he know so much about me? Asking seemed like a really bad idea, so I didn't. He walked me all the way over to Wendy's. "Hurry up and get your food, kid," he told me. "I won't tell if you won't. Just make it quick. It's late." Well, I got my food. The creepy man stood outside the restaurant while I ate. Then, when I got out, he escorted me back to the hotel. We talked a little about video games as we walked. Sonic Adventures 2 specifically, because I've been playing it religiously before coming on this trip. Before we parted ways, the man told me, "If your mom asks, just lie and say you were in the exercise room, and throw your cup out before you go upstairs." I've been messing around in the exercise room every night at that hotel. I liked playing on the treadmill and pumping iron. This person, who I never met before, who I never saw again, knew so much about me that he could literally pass for my older brother. I still wonder about it to this day. What a strange trip. "3 years ago, I admitted myself into the mental wing of the hospital and was put on 48-hour suicide watch. It was about 3 a.m. when I finally finished giving them all my belongings and had a temporary cot to sleep on while waiting for a room to open. Mind you, these cots are only separated by a sheet, and there are several unpredictable people around me who are also being admitted. One of these people was a guy my age, about half a foot taller than me, and had this wild look to him. He reminded me a lot about Gary Busey, which scared the crap out of me. Apparently, he'd taken a ton of mushrooms, dropped acid, and went on an Everclear drinking binge before the cops were called and brought him in. About an hour after falling asleep from a Valium the nurse gave me, I started waking up out of this semi-lucid, groggy, blurred state to see the dim light above me eclipsed by a figure. I assumed it was a doctor or a nurse, but as my vision became clearer, my heart began to pound. The wildly pulled hair, wide open, maniac eyes, and full-toothed smile was inches above my face. I felt as if I was paralyzed, hoping I could sink deeper into the cot while he raised his hand, crooked and wretched like a claw closer to me. Within seconds, 2 utterly massive security guards sprinted over, one running so fast that he inadvertently tackled the guy to the floor from having too much momentum to stop himself. That was by far the most terrifying experience I've ever had. The rest of my time there, however, something else disturbing happened. Our actual rooms had double doors with small glass panes on each one. At night, the doors would close, and security would patrol the hallway. For those 2 nights, I would hear the routine footsteps of the guard as he walked past in his heavy boots. But I also heard and saw something entirely different. I began to notice light, rapid tiptoeing in between each round the guard made in my section of the wing's square layout. The guard's boots would pass, but a minute later I would hear faster and faster and stop. I still wish I didn't look. I wish I would have kept my head buried under the covers in that room. I slowly turned my head and raised the sheet until I could just barely see out of my eye. As I looked at the door, I noticed nothing but the shine of 2 eyes staring at me. It was so dark I couldn't see the face behind them, just eyes. After a minute, horrified, they would swiftly go away, giggling and laughing under their breath until I heard the click of their door closing down the hall. Yeah, that creeped me the hell out, alright? That was more than enough motivation to seek out a therapist, and thankfully, I've been depression and anxiety free ever since. We moved into a new house a few months ago. As we were in the process of purchasing the house, the renter who was living in it died unexpectedly of natural causes in his mid-40s. He died right in the middle of the living room. Shortly after, we move into the house, and almost immediately, our 2-year-old daughter starts talking about the ghost that lives in our house. Now, let's be real here, she is 2, and 2-year-olds are very impressionable. Halloween had recently passed, and she had this Halloween-themed picture book that she loved to read. So, it's entirely possible that all this talk of ghosts was coming from looking through that book on a regular basis. Still, she was always telling me that the ghost was in her playhouse in the basement, or that the ghost was on the stairs, or that the ghost was standing in the corner. She never seemed to be afraid of the ghost, and considered him to be her friend. So, I wasn't all that concerned, even if there really was a ghost haunting in our house. If he's a nice and helpful ghost, it could certainly be a lot worse. I would often tell the ghost that he was welcome to stay if he wanted to, but he was also welcome to go if that would make him happier. I was about 30 to 70 on the ghost being real and she could see and talk to him, versus the ghost just being her imagination fueled by her Halloween book. Until one day, when we were going out to the car to go to her daycare in the morning, it was still dark out and rainy. My daughter told me that the ghost was on the back deck, and then she told me that today was the ghost's birthday and she wanted to sing him happy birthday. Once again, I mostly disregarded what she was saying, as she is birthday obsessed and has in the past made us sing happy birthday to Mickey Mouse, a bowl of fruit snacks, and the bathroom. So we sang and wished the ghost a happy birthday and went on with our lives. Later that day, out of pure curiosity, I looked up the obituary of the man who had died in our house. And wouldn't you know, it was his birthday.